glad to see you guys out there today. Let me ask you guys a question. Did you know that 43% of US children live without their fathers? And 85% of youth in prisons grew up in fatherless homes? 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless families. Fatherless boys and girls are twice as likely to drop out of school and twice as likely to end up in jail and 4 times more likely to need help for emotional and behavior problems. Children without fathers is an epidemic, and it's one that our guest today has decided to step up and make a difference about. This is Percy Kennedy Jr. He is the author of this amazing book called Voices of the Fatherless. It's a collection of letters from incarcerated dads to their children. Percy is passionate and called to help the children living in these fatherless homes. Voice of the Fatherless is a mentoring program focused on helping incarcerated dads connect with their children through a nationally recognized and accredited program called Inside Out Dads. So here we go. Welcome, Percy. My name is Alicia McPeak. If you're on my YouTube channel, make sure to stick around if this is a conversation you'd like to hear more about. Okay. Now, Percy, while we get started here, why don't you just share with everybody a little bit about you, your background, where you come from, and how you found yourself on this mission?
So I grew up not far from Houston in Southeast Texas in Beaumont, and lived there most of my life, and went to Lamar University on a football scholarship there, and that's the hometown, and so didn't live too far from the neighborhood, go to college too far away. And I will share an interesting story that I went from elementary through college on the same block. The elementary school was next door to the middle school was next door to the high school, and the university was right down the street. So
I don't think anybody does that. That's really fascinating.
And so my mom and dad, they actually still live in Beaumont. And then just through circumstances, my sophomore year in college, I ended up becoming a father, full custody of my son a few months after that, and raised my son as a single parent. I had the help of my family and friends along the way. So kind of a personal experience, I guess, from growing up with my mom and dad, but also after graduating from college, really hearing the phrase single parent. And, just never even heard that topic or that phrase before. And so I had an opportunity to be part of a single parent family group, and actually helped start one with the group, and using materials from like Focus on the Family, and just really got exposed to the whole issue of single parent families and single parent homes. And I say issues, I just mean that, statistically, there's a lot of negative situations around it. So it's something that I've been personally involved in for many years. I think at the time my son was probably like 8 years old, and now he's probably about 30, 32, 31. And so that's kind of was my introduction. I was exposed to several individuals who spoke to that, kind of led to my passion for it. One particular book that was given to me was called The Hidden Mission Field. And this was by an author named Teresa McKenna. And The Hidden Mission Field title is, Ministering or Reaching the Modern Day Orphans and Widows. And basically translating single parent families as being the modern day orphans and widows, and the design or the call specifically for the church to step up and help and reach out. Because what happens in a lot of cases when you have 2-parent families and the prevalency of divorce, especially if they were a member of a local church and a divorce occurs, you have a situation where, the couples, were very active in the couples ministry. Now there's a divorce, and neither the mom or dad no longer feel comfortable going to that church because all of their friends was tied to their relationship as a couple. And so now mom and dad are not going to church. Guess what happens? The children are not going to church. And so that's the devastation of divorce. And what happens is kids end up not being part of a local church. And the single mom in a lot of cases feels isolated from the relationship she had before. And Teresa's book actually addressed that issue from her personal experience after going through a divorce. And she definitely was a mentor to me along the way. She was ended up being my life coach for about a year and a half. So we really stayed in contact. She's in the Washington area, and she now leads a ministry and organization called Empowerment Strategies as a coaching ministry. But she works with churches and leaders in churches, and even those in the corporate world. But she just shares her journey as a single parent mom, and gives tools and resources to help reach that population. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. And even after that, I heard a message by a gentleman by the name of Derek Prince, which I highly recommend you look at. Everyone's watching this on YouTube. You can type in Orphans, Widows, the Poor, and the Oppressed by Derek Prince. I actually heard that message live. And at that point, I was really seeking and asking God the purpose for my life. And he was basically saying the exact same words of Teresa, that the single parent families are the modern day orphans, widows, and the widows of the Bible that the Bible talks about. And so if you look at kids in foster care, kids in single parent family, kids in homes with no fathers, those are considered widows, orphans, according to the Bible. And of course, there's a lot of negative situations that can occur as a result, some of the statistics that you mentioned before. So that's how it started for me.
It's a fascinating story. I'm going to read from your book right here some more statistics. Dads have a direct impact on their children's future. Kids who grow up with involved fathers are 39% more likely to earn mostly A's in school, 45% less likely to repeat a grade, 60% less likely to be suspended or expelled, twice as likely to go to college and find stable employment after high school, and 75% less likely to have a teen birth, and 80% less likely to spend time in jail. How did you find your way to turning this into a prison ministry? Because that last statistic is huge. 80% less likely to spend time in jail.
Yeah, 80% less likely. And on the reverse side, about 85% of incarcerated men come from a fatherless family. And so it's just been a transition, I think, in progression in terms of where we are now from where we started. Working with single parent families has evolved to understanding more about the epidemic and the issue. Oftentimes single moms may feel struggle, trying to raise a son or trying to raise a daughter by themselves. And at the root of it all is not the problems of just single parent families, but the issue and the root cause is fatherlessness. And I was given a quote that said, if you really want to understand the issues of fatherlessness, and if you want to look at an environment where it's prevalent, visit a prison. And I heard that and never had any intentions to ever visit a prison, even after hearing that. But a short time after that, I was approached by a lady from my church. Her name is Vonnie. And Vonnie was doing a discipleship and literacy training program. A couple ladies and other men from our church were doing this program. And they asked, well, would you be interested in doing something at the prison? Now, right around that time, I had just heard that quote. Now I'm asking, someone's inviting me to go to prison. And then a short time after that, I remember having a conversation with a young man that I was mentoring. And his situation is he was being raised by his mom and his grandmother. But his dad was incarcerated. And even though his dad was incarcerated, I can see that he really had a desire to be connected with his father. And he was excited because his dad was going to be coming home soon. And I was like, wow, the mentors are great. But at the end of the day, he really wanted to have a relationship with his dad. So all these events happened within, I would say, within 30 days of one another. And so I really kind of got the message there. So I began to talk to Bonnie and say, would you be interested in doing something with the men in prison? And so I was like, okay, what could we possibly do? And so I went online and just started researching different programs in prison. And I came across this one particular program, and it was called Inside Out Dads. And it's a mentoring program by the National Father Initiative. And all the statistics that you mentioned, but also all of the additional statistics that show that involved dads that are incarcerated with their kids while they're incarcerated, their rate of recidivism or their rate of going back to prison is lower. And then also, too, it reduces the likelihood that their children will go to prison. Another statistic is that children of incarcerated parents have a 7 times greater risk of incarceration than those that don't. So these kids end up being in a situation where they fall into a cycle of incarceration. And so I looked at Inside Out Dads, and it was just clear that that was something that we were supposed to pursue. Um, and right around that time, there was a movie. We were doing a movie night. We rented a movie theater in Humble, and we rent the theaters for single parent families and their kids to come and watch a movie for free. And the title of the movie was Inside Out, and which
Oh,
was
wow.
it talked about emotions. And so I was like, okay, this is something of looking into. And then after research, I found out that there was an opportunity to go to the corporate office and become a facilitator. And then just talking to the leadership of my church, they supported and made it available for me to go and be trained as a facilitator of the Inside Out Dad program. And I brought that back to my team, and the team at that time was me. And then I brought it and presented that to a couple of other men, and they were like, "Oh, well, this is something we want to do." And this started back in 2016. We had the very first Inside Out Dad program at a prison in the Houston area. And from there, in 2016, we started with 16 men, and all of those guys graduated. And we did something that really is not part of the program. There were some things that we added, and one of those was to have a graduation. And just through God's favor, we were able to have the graduation in which the facility allowed the children of the incarcerated dad to come and participate in the graduation. And that graduation we turned that into, called that graduation Christmas with Dad. And we've been doing the Inside Out Dads program and the Christmas with Dad program since 2016. And last year, we probably had almost 90 men that participated in the program. So we went from those 16 to over 90. And now that COVID is kind of opening opportunities for us to go back into prison, they're calling and say, when can we get started again? And what's been amazing is to see the men who have grown and the men who have reconnected with their kids and didn't have a relationship with their kids. We've had guys that never ever saw their children, meeting them for the first time. We had 2 ex-wives drive their 2 kids from Indiana in the same car to bring both kids to Texas to be able to spend Christmas with their dad. And to see that those relationships have been just really amazing as a highlight of what we do. You can go to our website, voicesofthefatherless.com, and see some of the videos and a lot of the photos. So that's kind of how we got started, in the prison. And it has revolved into these men now who have gone through our program. 2 things have happened. Many of them are home now. And so I'll share more about what our plans are for as the next step utilizing the book. But the guys who have gone through our program, they are now volunteers with Voices of the Fatherless, and they are facilitators leading the men who are currently in the prison through the program. And so our goal is to reach every man in the unit. There's about 3,500 guys there. And so we've only reached a couple of hundred, but our goal is to reach the men there and expand to other facilities. And the other thing,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
and then the last thing, the guys that are home now, we have guys who are now going through the training to become volunteers with Voices of the Fatherless. And we had our first guy, Ray, and his story is in the book. He went back with us and was able to facilitate as a volunteer, not an incarcerated dad, and lead a group of men from his perspective, saying 18 months ago, I was sitting here as an inmate, and the impact of this program and leading a group of men. So that's our goal, is to not only have men that go through the program, but raise up leaders and facilitators and give them opportunity to give back.
Well, and I know you have more plans for these men after that you're going to share with us, but I was going to mention that is the most powerful thing you could possibly do, because first of all, those men have been where these other men are, and they're more relatable. They share the same understanding about being in prison and not having the experiences with their sons. So I have to imagine that's extremely powerful for the inmates as well. But it also, it's the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. It keeps people not repeating the same thing, because they're sharing and helping other people. They're in service to other people, which is huge. It's actually brilliant.
Yeah, and like for Christmas this past year, before we actually had the official book launch, I was able to deliver copies of the book to a half a dozen other men at their homes during the holidays.
Wow.
I was excited about delivering the book to the guy who wrote the letters, but I wasn't really prepared for, which was a pleasant surprise, is the response that the children got was given when they saw the letter that their dad had wrote them was published in the book.
Right. I listen every time I listen to it, I get emotional. What you're doing is so powerful. So let's talk about that, both from the child's perspective and from the father's perspective. So in case you guys don't quite know or understand, this is letters from the dads in the prisons to their children and sharing their experiences. And what I know from talking to Percy and working through this book is that there's so much shame involved, and shame's going to keep us from being where we need to be and doing what we need to do. So let's talk about it from both perspectives. Share how these men are feeling, and then share what you've seen with the children.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of viewpoints. One is, there's one guy, and I share real stories because I think that delivers the message. Is that this guy, he was coming to our class, but he never was participating, never wasn't saying anything, but he was coming week after week, week after week, week after week, and there was just a meanness or sadness in his face. And at the end of each session, about three-fourths of the way in, we have a session where we ask the men, what has God spoken to you through the program, or what have you learned through the program? And this guy had never communicated, never said anything for the group. And at that point, he raised his hand. And of course, it was like, okay, what is he about to say, right? So he stood up and came to the front of the room, and he said, what I learned from this class is that I matter. That's all he said, and he sat down. And at that point, we really understood what he was struggling with was low self-esteem, depression, being separated from his family. And that particular graduation was amazing because his mom, the mother, his children, and his 4 daughters were all at the prison celebrating Christmas with Dad. And to see how he was totally transformed, not on the inside, yes, on the inside, but also we can see the continents on his face. And he began to share how he was suicidal, depressed, and all because of the shame and guilt and his repetitiveness of incarceration and being in prison. And he made a statement. He goes, I'm never going back. He goes, I'm not doing this to my kids and my family ever again. And, today he's working on getting his certification as an electrician, and he's doing very well. And so that's from a perspective of, from a dad, and a lot of these men struggle. I think about this 16-year-old boy, and he was just beaming. And I have 2 stories that are just phenomenal. He's 16 and he's tall. I'm like 6'2", 6'3". And we asked the kids that come and spend the day with the dad, I said, what was it like? He goes, I've always dreamed of this day. He goes, this is the first Christmas I've ever spent with my dad. His dad he was 4 years old when his dad went to prison. And so here he is 12 years later. And he goes, that was a desire that I had in my heart. He had never spoken to anyone before. I think about Joey. His letter is also in the book. Joey met his son, who was 14 years old, for the first time. And it was through going through the program, doing the work, reaching out to the mother of his children, reaching out to the mother of his son. And his sister was able to bring his son, who met his dad for the very first time. And you can see the interview with this young man after the program. I said, tell us about this day. What is it like? And unrehearsed, his own words, he goes, I remember this day for the rest of my life. And that was his first day meeting his dad. And since then, it's almost 2.5 years later, they communicate through writing. And, Joey will be coming home soon. And, his son's 16 now. And he goes, we have a relationship that never existed before. And so, this boy's life has changed, and his dad's life has changed. And so we're part of something that is bigger than us. And when you are embarking upon what God has called you to do, it's not going to be easy roads, and everything is not going to be perfect. But when you see the outcome, all the challenges or struggles that you may go through personally, may go through unexpectedly, even when you have challenges in your own life, your own family. My encouragement to people is that you just keep moving along, keep going along, going towards that goal, and recognize that if God's called you to do something, He's going to equip you in every area of your life to continue to pursue that dream or that desire. And so, even with the book, how that came about is much. We never anticipated writing a book, but the letters were just so powerful. We had a conversation with the guys, and it's like, man, what if we could share these letters with kids, not only just your own kids? What about kids in schools? And so we began to just look at that idea. And the book is written in 3 sections. So there are letters to their kids. One section of the book is letters the men are writing to their younger selves. What is it that I wish I would have had communicated to me when I was younger? And then the third section is a group of letters to our youth. And so if you look at the areas that these guys come from, and you look at the book, from totality, what are those key things? Number one, faith. They all come to understand the importance of the faith. And, most did not have a relationship with God. Many of the men that come to our program, they don't have a relationship with God because we open it up to everyone in the program. And it's not a faith-based ministry. It's offered to whoever wants to participate. Many of the men come to have a relationship with Jesus after going through our class. Friendship, faith, friendship, respect for authority, expressing their emotions in a healthy way, and then the importance of education. And Alicia, this is crazy. If you look on the very back of the book, look at that acronym: faith, friendship, respect for authority, expressing emotion, education. You read that from the bottom up. The acronym is FREE.
Sure is.
And I didn't see that until the book was published. So,
Wow.
I believe that, by having a conversation with these youth, having a conversation with these dads and their kids, that it's an opportunity to bring setting the captives free.
And you're helping put families back together, people back together. This month's theme for my YouTube channel is transformation, and you're helping transform lives. What I want to know from you is, how has this transformed you?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I mean, as parents, you look back at all of the things that you could have done differently. Now that, at least when you have an older child, and it's like, man, and I could have done this different. And there was time I really struggled in that area because, you have a desire to want to be perfect, right, as a parent. And then at the same time, you want your kids to be that perfect child. So I learned from this, and my transformation is, at the end of the day, there's only one perfect father, and I'm not he. There's only one perfect parent, and I'm not him either. And God's the perfect father. And the most important thing that we can do is lead and direct our children towards Jesus. Set them the example, share the word, and lead the results up to God. And, I have conversations with fathers and mothers whose children are adults and they're not living the life that they hope and desire. And I can say with all certainty that no matter what it looks like, you have to trust God's word, that no matter what we see, we have to choose to believe that faith is greater than anything or any situation. And it says in the Bible, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they get older, they will not depart. And, you can interpret that in many different ways. I choose to believe that when we share God's word with our kids, whether or not we see the results, we have to understand that God is responsible for the results. So this has definitely transformed my perspective of how I see myself as a father and a parent, but also to be able to see the volunteers from our program that go and come in the situation as a volunteer. There's not a volunteer that has not been part of our program, has not seen their life transform. Because remember, the guys that go through the program, they are facilitators as well. And one of the things that we share with the guys is to be proactive in your pursuit of your relationships with your dad, because if you don't, it will actually hinder your ability to father your own children.
Oh, interesting.
And that was a challenge that was given to me many years ago. And I was in my late 20s. And, I was in a situation where I knew my dad loved me, but I never, ever heard him say, I love you. And, I'm in a small group and we're talking about it with other group of men. And probably more than half of the men would say, yeah, my dad, I've never heard him say that. But, our fathers, they demonstrated the love through working hard, bringing food, doing those things that they knew to do. And I remember one of the guys in our group, he goes, well, Percy, when was the last time you told your dad you loved him? And I was like, yeah. So I was like, he was like, you have to not have an expectation of him giving something to you that you're not giving to him, or maybe his dad never told him that.
Yeah.
And so just through reaching out to my dad, having a conversation and letting him know I appreciate what he's done, things he communicated, things that he shared, the values that he did bestow upon me that were positive, because I was one of those young men stuck in the negative, didn't think about the positive things. And there were challenges I had, being raised, but I was stuck in the negative. And I remember that my challenge with the guys was like, you need to reach out to your dad. You need to tell him you love him. And so I did that. And I believe that it was a turning point for me. And we do those things not responsible for the outcome. But I remember telling my dad, I said, I love you. And he goes, I love you too. And, even today, we have a conversation and he always says, I love you. But a lot of times we tell these guys the same stories, and we see these guys challenging our volunteers. And I have stories on top of stories where our volunteers were challenged by incarcerated dads. What's your relation with your dad? And we'll see relationships change and transformation taking place from those that volunteer and those that work with incarcerated dad. I think of one of the things, and our volunteers are men and women. And I remember one of our volunteers, we asked the ladies who volunteered to write a letter to their dad, and then they take the letters they wrote to their dad, and they come and they read their letters to the incarcerated dads, saying, your daughter's going to write a letter about you one day. What will it sound like? So they're hearing from they're hearing from adults, females, a letter. Your daughter is younger, because most of the kids in our program are 17 and under, and they're hearing a letter from a grown woman. And I have one lady, she goes, you know what? My dad was a phenomenal man, and I'm going to give him this letter. And because of me volunteering in this program, I'm going to let my dad know while he's alive what he meant to me. And she said, I never communicated that to him before. And so it's transformation is taking place from whoever would be available. Those that want to go and serve, the kids' lives are being transformed by having actively participating fathers in their life, the mother of the children. The second year of our program, which was amazing, we're able to bring the entire family to spend Christmas with the dad. So the moms of the children, as well as the kids themselves, and just being able to spend that whole day. And it's all designed to connect and create an environment where they can just share stories with one another, and just being able to communicate their love for them.
Incredible. Okay, before we get to the logistics of things, let me ask you one more question. I think every parent out there has felt like they've screwed up in some royal way, probably. A lot of us have felt that way. From what you've learned, what would you tell that parent?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, recognizing that we may have a plan and purpose for their life, but God's plan and purpose is far greater. And we only have them for a certain period of time to stand in that position as a parent, but they belong to God. They don't belong to us. And we have them for a season. And God's plan and purpose for them is greater than the plan and purpose that we may have for them. And even when things don't look as they should, you just make sure you just continue to pray for them every day. I have a prayer written in my phone that I pray for my son every day almost. And, the thing with that, God is responsible. He loves them more than we do. Regardless of how much we may love our kids, God's love for them is far greater than that. And, we have them for a season, but he has them for eternity.
Right. My mother used to always say, God doesn't have any grandchildren.
Mm.
Meaning exactly what you just said. God, and from my perspective, because I definitely have felt like as a parent that I've screwed up royally in places in my life, and coming to the place for me of being able to understand that my journey is their journey and God has their back. And there's no mistakes. It was very powerful for me. This is such an emotional thing that you're doing. What I want to ask you is, how can people help you?
Well, the thing that's so important for us is people. Yes, we would love to, make a financial contribution, donation, all that can go on through our website. The money is used to run more programs, purchase more books. We send books on a regular basis to incarcerated dads. When you purchase the book, that gives us more funds to be able to reach more men. The greatest gift we could have is people going to our website, What's of the Fatherless, and click join the team. And joining the team means that we will connect you with the abilities to be trained as a volunteer to assist us in our mission going into the prison, helping incarcerated dads. So you individuals, coming in 18 or older as a volunteer, that's the human resource, the human capital, because you can't be replaced, and the change that I believe that, God wants us to have, it never is going to be fixed by the government. It's never going to be fixed by social programs. And there are things that need to be changed legislatively. There's rules and things that need to be changed, but we can't wait for those things to go into place. And at the end of the day, people talking to people, giving unconditional love, encouraging them to seek God's plan and purpose for their life, and having those conversations of getting to know people and develop relationships where you can help inspire them and keep them, straight, going towards the right direction. That's really needed. So people. The second thing is just understanding that there are a group of young people out there who are on the path to be incarcerated. They're in your neighborhood, they're in your family, they're in your schools, they're in your churches. Reach out and mentor a young boy or girl. And, we can give you tools and resources to help and to be able to share that story. There's a story of a good friend of mine. His name is Jay Nicholson. Jay is in, I think, Kansas, St. Louis, somewhere in that area. I always get it mixed up. But Jay's story is in the book, and how he reached out to a young man named Dylan. Several years ago, Jay called and said, "Hey, Percy, I want to be a part of what you're doing." And he goes, "I just feel like, I'm here," and he's a supporter financially, but he goes, "I want to be a part of what you're doing." And I said, "Well, Jay, why don't you just find a young boy, a girl, and mentor them, teach them how to golf." And so he went to through a friend of his that has a youth program, and he talked to him and told me he wanted to mentor someone and maybe teach them how a game of golf. And he goes, "That's strange. We just had a youth camp this weekend, and Dylan wanted to learn how to play golf." So we shipped him some golf clubs from here, from the clubs that we had that were donated. And he started taking this young boy out to hit golf balls. And golf ended up not being the thing for him, but it ended up being the thing that connected Dylan and Jay. Jay was able to work with him in terms of helping him with school. And he went from not being able to graduate to graduating with honors through Jay's relationship with Jay, working with him, his wife helping him, tutoring him. And he was at his home every weekend. Jay taught him how to drive. Jay helped him, get his first job. And, the thing with it is that there was bumps along the way, but Jay did something and provided something that was more valuable than money. Jay provided himself and his family. Jay connected with the young man's mother, who was living in inner city in that area, and just was there as a support, and him and his challenges and struggles. And he's in a different place now than he would have been had Jay not follow along that path. So now Dylan's graduated, getting ready to go to college. And I said, Jay, what's the next step? Guess what? Jay has 2 boys now. We went back to the same youth facility, mentoring facility, and now he has 2 boys, 2 brothers, and he's going through the same path, inviting them into his family, leading, guiding, and directing them from the best that he possibly can. So
it sounds to me like if you get involved, your life's going to be transformed more than you could possibly imagine. It's incredible.
Jay and Darlin's story is in the book. And so, and that mentoring is not something that, the children benefit from that, from having it. The mom, in a lot of cases, benefits from that. And so you can transform a family in your area.
So what is your goal for this book?
So the next goal of the book is really exciting because, as I mentioned, about half of the dads who wrote the letters are home now. And so they're home, and many of them are getting jobs, staying connected with their family, not going back to prison. We have, guys are struggling a little bit, getting jobs and everything, but they understood that, but they're fighting through that. But our goal for the book is to be able to utilize the book as a resource to reach our youth through partnerships with local schools. You look at the very title of the book, it says Letters from Incarcerated Dads Aimed at Breaking the Prison Pipeline. Most teachers will understand that there's a phenomenon called school to prison pipeline. And it starts very, very early. You'd be surprised to realize that a child can actually enter into the criminal justice system by early as 4th grade. Think about that, 4th grade.
Incredible.
Many elementary schools, if you have a 3rd or 4th grader hits another 3rd or 4th grader, they don't send that child to the principal office only. That child, in a lot of cases, are sent to the principal office, and a police officer is called to the school.
Yeah,
and that's
true.
An assault.
Wow.
And so now that child has a charge from the judicial system that requires the mom now to go to court and have a hearing. So that child, a 4th grader, is now has a criminal record. So, wow. In a lot of cases, it is a 4th grader who's living in a situation where there's no father in the home, where we know there's a likelihood, not 100%, but a high percentage of the time, has not been taught the importance of respect for authority. And of course, there needs to be changes in the system. I don't think a 4th grader should get a ticket for whatever, hitting another 4th grader. There should be some type of form of discipline that doesn't require a court system.
Well, and it didn't used to. When I went to school, it didn't used to. So
anyway, we want to connect with schools, utilizing the book and utilize these stories to break the cycle. Kids that are going across the path, and even the book stories and the letters will be for teachers to identify maybe students who sound like what they're reading in the book, and to get a different perspective. And so that's something that we've launched this year. Our first, we'll do it every year, essay writing contest. What is fatherlessness, and how does it affect our youth? And that perspective of fatherlessness, I just want important to say, it does not necessarily mean you're living in a single parent family home, because fatherlessness can exist even in the presence of a male in the home if that father is not emotionally connected to their children and as a support. And so you can have a situation of fatherlessness even if there's a father in the home. But what do our young people have to say about it? We want to hear from our youth, because many of these men who wrote these letters, they were like, I wish I would have had this conversation earlier on. I would have had understanding for my need to join a gang, that I was looking and seeking for a family, and that the gang leaders in a lot of cases becomes the surrogate father, and how I was needing affirmations. I was willing to do whatever was told to me, even though it was something that was illegal. And now I'm in prison because of not dealing with that fatherlessness. So just if we can have our young people have these conversations early and begin to verbalize through writing what they're feeling, maybe we can prevent a child or maybe 2 children from going to prison. And so that's kind of the vision I believe that we have for the book. If you look at all the stickies up on my wall there, these are some of the male volunteers and female volunteers that go with us. And these are just people that come alongside. And then we want to inspire more people to engage with use the book to recruit more volunteers so we can reach more prisons. So we just hope it's a tool that will be something to motivate and inspire those of the issue of fatherlessness, motivate and inspire individuals to get engaged with our ministry or our organization. Or at the list of at the back of the book, there's a host of other organizations that you can get involved with. Dr. Ken Canfield, founder of the National Fatherhood.com, he wrote the foreword of the book. You can join his organization. Cassie Carson, who also wrote a chapter, who has The World Needs a Father, which is a ministry that impacts the issues of fatherlessness on a global scale. He's been in nations all over the world, and they're looking for mentors and volunteers in that gap. And I'm talking about every country you can possibly think of. So it's a global epidemic. And so that's kind of where I'm hoping. Who knows? I even kind of feel that the engagement and activities with our youth, may inspire some young person out there to write their own book, share their own story. So,
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for bringing these stories to us. Where can people find the book?
So the book is available on Amazon in paperback as well as ebook. The week that we launched the book actually was ranked number 64,600 the week we launched the e-version. And on that weekend, we actually went to number 72 overall in Kindle, and number 1 in parenting and number 1 in fatherhood. And so it's available on Amazon. And if you have the book already, we encourage you to write a review. And definitely, if you have a positive experience, please write a review. If you don't like it, please don't write a review.
We don't want your review.
It's available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, Target. Go to our website, and you can purchase it through voicesofthefatherless.com. And also I'm available for local book signings, and you can actually get a copy of the book, and we'll bring copies for the book signing. We can do that one-on-one. So then having opportunities to meet with teachers, introducing the book. And so we'll deliver it. I had a gentleman the other day, was like, I want to share this book with, some members of my church. And so I was able to mail him copies of the book. So you can reach out to me directly, voicesofthefatherless@gmail.com. And so if you want to buy a quantity of the books, we can give you, discount. The books are $14.99 on Amazon. But if you purchase 10 or more, there are discounts for that as well. So.
Okay. You mentioned your website. Say that again.
Voicesofthefatherless.com.
And then your email?
Is voicesofthefatherless@gmail.com.
Where else can people find you on social media?
We have social media. Voices of the Fatherless has a page on Facebook. There's also Voices of the Fatherless on Twitter, and Voices of the Fatherless on Instagram.
So you're everywhere. Okay, so go follow all his social media outlets, share his outlets, share his book. Percy, I want to thank you so much for doing what you're doing. You're changing generations. You're breaking generational curses by doing this ministry and helping to reach these families. And you brought something to me that I didn't have a firsthand knowledge of that's really spoken to my heart. So I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I love the idea of getting these books into schools. So if anybody out there can help with that, reach out to Percy. Okay, so let's wrap this up now. If you guys are here on Facebook, give Percy a big thumbs up. If you're on the replay, go ahead and put #replay so we know you stopped by. We don't know if you came by unless you tell us. And right now, if you're on the YouTube channel, please go right now and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of these amazing chats. Please comment and share so Percy's story gets out. It's an important story to share. Thank you again, Percy.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.